Okay, so my service cut out, but I read a little bit of the first chapter. Definitely not going to go back. But what I was explaining is how these things line up. So basically, in that first little part of the first chapter, Caroline Myss was talking about how negative and positive experiences can reshape our DNA or the chemicals that release in our body and reshape our body chemistry and our biology, and our experiences become our biology, which is an experience that I've talked about a couple different times when it comes to post-traumatic slave syndrome. My relation to that was I have a talk on Sunday about the 4 agreements. The first agreement, be impeccable with your word. It's talking about spells. So I think it's interesting. Caroline Myss, she uses an example of if a teacher humiliated you for not knowing that 12 was a dozen, and that creates a biology and creates a reaction inside of you, you know, it becomes a part of your DNA, right? And the 4 agreements, another book, when it's talking about being impeccable to your word, it's talking about how when you use negative words or agree to negativity, you are casting that spell on yourself, right? So an example he used is if you were a child and your mom was like, you can't sing, you would then carry that on, and it would change the way you perceive the world. So the 4 agreements is talking about how these experiences change how you perceive the world, which is obviously true. And in the Anatomy of the Spirit, she uses the same example, but also to say, because she is a past, she's not a past practicing doctor, but she was a medical doctor that then began getting into spiritual practices and saw how they related. So in the 4 agreements, he talks about how those spells or the words can be used to change your perception of yourself and the things around you, creating a personal hell. And in Anatomy of the Spirit, she's talking about how these things can do the same thing, but also change your biology, change the chemical releasing, the things that are chemically released in your body when you have these positive or negative experiences. And like she said, Dr. Pert went on to say that we hold negative emotions or experiences in our body and contribute to our DNA. So it's just like 2 different ways of saying the same thing, which I feel like a lot of people, bring up when saying creating the reality that you want. So I thought that was interesting. I'm going to get back into the next part. Okay. Reading the field. In addition to reading specific, make sure it's still online. Okay, yeah. In addition to reading specific dramatic childhood experiences, sometimes an intuitive can even pick up on superstitions, personal habits, behavior patterns, moral beliefs, and preferences in music and literature. At other times, the energy impressions are more symbolic. For instance, from one patient who was suffering from tightness of breath, I kept receiving the symbolic impression of him being shot in the heart before a firing squad. Obviously, this has not literally happened to him, but he had undergone extensive medical tests, which could locate no known physical cause for his condition. After I shared my impression with him, he told me that his wife had betrayed him several times with other men, and being shot through the heart was exactly how he felt about her actions. By admitting these emotions, which he had previously tried to ignore, he was able to address the problems both in his marriage and in his health. So, that's like the same thing with the biology. So she's basically talking about energy medicine, intuitives that, how you go to a doctor and you're like, hey, this hurts. We do the same thing with spiritual healers and tarot readers and energy healers. I mean, I did the same thing. It's like you, being inclined, spiritually inclined, you would check in on these things consistently. But a lot of the times we only call on God or something, someone when we need them, you know. So she's talking about an experience of being or seeing an intuitive seeing this energy of this man standing behind a firing squad of several men and being shot down, just to find out, of course, obviously that didn't happen, but his wife had betrayed him several different times with other men. So it was like a representation of those men taking part in his psychological death, or the breaking of his heart, you know. And when he was able to actually identify the root, he was able to actually see that, dive into it, and do something about it. So another way that, like I said, that those experiences store in our body, just like that guy said, and I'm shocked about it too as I'm reading it, but when you think about it, you're like, oh, you know, there are things that we do hold on to, and we kind of create our new responses to these things. We create this kind of normality around it, to where we don't look into it to change it. On to the next. Practitioners of energy medicine believe that the human energy field contains and reflects each individual's energy. It surrounds us and carries with us the emotional energy created by our internal and external experiences, both positive and negative. This emotional force influences the physical tissue within our bodies. In this way, your biography, that is, and the experiences that make up your life, become your biology. Absorb and process specific emotional and psychological energies. That is, each area of the body transmits energy on a specific detailed frequency, and when we are healthy, all are in tune. An area of the body that is not transmitting at its normal frequency indicates the location of a problem. A change in intensity of the frequency indicates a change in the nature and seriousness of the illness, and reveals the stress pattern that has contributed to the development of the illness. Okay? A change in intensity in the frequency indicates a change in the nature and seriousness of the illness, and reveals the stress pattern that has contributed to the development of the illness. This way of interpreting the body's energy is sometimes called vibrational medicine. It resembles the most ancient medical practices and beliefs, from Chinese medicine to indigenous shamanic practices to virtually every folk or alternative therapy. The truth is that energy medicine is not new, but I believe my interpretation of it and how you can use it to heal spiritually in conjunction with the contemporary medical treatments is unique. If a person is able to sense intuitively that he or she is losing energy, there's bugs out here, losing energy because of a stressful situation, and then acts to correct that loss of energy, then the likelihood of that stress developing into a physical crisis is reduced, if not eliminated completely. While I can parse the language of energy for you so that you can begin to see and feel the human energy field, begin to understand its corresponding spiritual anatomy, begin to know the sources of your personal power, and begin to develop your own intuition, I have some trouble explaining exactly how I personally acquire energy information. Other intuitives appear to have the same difficulty, but we all pick up on information that has the strongest impulse, the most intensity. These impulses usually relate directly to the part of the body that is becoming weakened or diseased. As a rule, a person's energy system transmits only the information that is essential to bring the conscious mind to an awareness of the imbalance or disease. Like the shot in the heart image, symbolic information can sometimes be disturbing, but this intensity is necessary in order that the body's message can break through the habitual mental or emotional patterns that cause the disease to form in the first place. Medical intuitions cooperate with the body's intention to promote its own health in life. That is, our energy will always seek health, in spite of what we may do to ourselves physically. If, for example, we tell a lie, our energy field will often communicate to the other person the energy fact that we are not telling the truth. Energy does not and cannot lie. I had to sit on that one for a little bit. Yeah, I think that we know that, right? And there's a lot of different ways to categorize it and try to make sense of it, but I definitely feel like that energy doesn't lie thing, no matter how you use it or where you use it. Um, it's a present. Sorry, it's a parent. It's a parent. And even sometimes, like, you'll be in an area with somebody, you can tell that they don't like you, or you can tell that they're attracted to you, like they're trying to get your attention, just like subtle things like that. Energy field is present, and it's very important because that's why people speak on the importance of knowing who you have around you. And I think that there was one part in here that it was talking about that again reminded me of the four agreements. I think it was basically when she was saying, oh yeah, if a person is able to sense intuitively that he or she is losing energy because of a stressful situation, and then acts to correct that loss of energy, then the likelihood of the stress developing into a physical crisis is reduced, if not completely eliminated. That reminded me of, again, the four agreements when they talk about, he says that once you let go of these past agreements that you made or other people made for you or that you agreed to that you didn't know what you were agreeing to, once you let go of those things, your reality will change. And one thing that he did say in the first chapter about being impeccable to your word is that in that way you can perceive the world and be in an atmosphere where you are living in a personal heaven amongst a world of people that are living in their own personal hell because you are immune to it, right? And she was also talking about being able to take in, the information and medicine to use it to heal yourself. And Dawn from the Four Agreements was speaking about having, you can only plant a seed of positivity or negativity and a mind that is fertile for it. You know what I mean? So if you are raising yourself to have a steady and positive mind, and I would say raising yourself just because we are raised, and those are what gives us some of our agreements, and then we grow up again past the worldly views and the tribal views that we received, right? And I find it ironic because I am in this place of healing, and I'm being called to a lot of different books right now and a lot of different things, but a lot of them do speak on and touch on changing your reality and the way that you perceive things in order to stop blocking yourself from your blessings or to live in a personal heaven, in a world where you can live in a personal hell if you so choose. I really feel like it's interesting. And like I said, every time with this book, it would be something that I would have to take and process and think about and look at. And, you know, every time I would come back to it, I would be, it's almost like a guideline and you don't realize it. Because as soon as I would process that and start living my life in that light, then I would come back to the book, like, okay, let me read some more of it. And this was like in the span of like every week or so, you know what I mean? Because it's a lot to process. You're healing. But be in that phase where you do it and you come back and you're now this thing applies to you perfectly. Definitely in that synchronicity point where I'm definitely doing some of this work. So that's why I felt like it was important to share it and be able to put it in a place where I can do something with it, because uh, every time I'm on a ledge, this book literally puts everything into a perspective that I can fathom. Okay, so let's get back into it. Stay with your first impression. No, not her reading my life. This is what I be saying. Like, goddamn. Okay, anyways. So I'm gonna read the last sentence of the last one and then start with this, okay? If, for example, we tell a lie, our energy field will often communicate to the other person the energy fact that we are not telling the truth. Energy does not and cannot lie. So women lie, men lie, Wayne lie, but energy cannot lie. Amazing. Stay with your first impression. When you receive an intuitive impression about yourself or the person you are reading, pay attention to whatever image comes up. Most people are looking for safe intuitions, not healthy ones, and safe insights, not healthy insights, because they usually want a safe passage into the future, into the unknown. So you may be tempted to dismiss a disturbing image that you receive, or one that is not congruent with your own desires, or those of the person you are reading. Most people who come to me for an evaluation have already intuited themselves that something is wrong, but they are hoping that I will give that feeling some other meaning, such as you're merely going through a natural body change, but nothing is wrong with you physically. But it is important to tell people the truth, not what they want to hear. Again and again, I have to confirm the negative intuitive impressions of people seeking my help. Their abilities are as accurate as mine. These people know they are ill. But since I do not share fear, my intuitions can interpret their data better than they themselves. Okay. So just once again to reiterate, she is a medical doctor that then got into the field of intuitive healing and combines both of them. So when she's talking in the present tense, or, in some tense, about talking to people as an intuitive healer, this is after she was already literally a medical doctor. And so I find that interesting, because a lot of the times we use science to combat spirituality, but I often find that they kind of go hand in hand, because they're just some things that are natural truths that we just can't combat. No matter if we put the control of religion or whatever we put on it, there are some things that are just the truth. And she talks about these underlying truths, but I wanted to point that out. People must face that which they fear. For instance, in the case of the man shot through the heart, it seemed on the surface safer to him to avoid confronting his adulterous wife with his suspicions that she was cheating on him. Instead of acting on his intuitions, he directed his hurt and anger underground into his body, which manifested eventually as chest pains. His body and spirit were striving to wake him up to the need to deal with his wife's cheating, but, as so many people do, he had hoped that by not confronting the problem, it would go away. His body, however, revealed that the true cost of his safe approach was a challenge to his health. This man's story illustrates how powerful intuitions really are, and how they can break through the most determined mindset to lead us towards healing. Life is painful at times, and spiritually we are not meant to face the pains that life presents. In the Western world, however, we often misrepresent God's plan for us and expect life to be comfortable and free from trouble. We measure God's presence in our lives by our level of personal comfort. We believe God is here if our prayers are answered. But neither God nor Buddha nor any other spiritual leader or tradition guarantees or encourages a pain-free life. Spiritual teachings encourage us to grow past and through painful experiences, each of which is a spiritual lesson. Developing intuitive ability will help us learn the lessons inherent in our experiences. Have a reflective state of mind. There is no one formula by which you can develop your intuition. Some people develop it through meditation or as a result of mastering a certain talent or sport. I've often heard of people say that intuitive ability is the result of a spiritual lifestyle, but that is not accurate. Intuitive ability is present in everyone because it is a survival skill, not a spiritual intention. Maintaining a reflective or meditative attitude, however, facilitates your reception of intuitions. Objectivity will help you interpret the impressions you receive and put them into a symbolic spiritual context. I was also talking about this, someone that basically told me that they're not necessarily spiritual, the way that they vibrate and the way that they describe their life. It's like they're still on their spiritual path without necessarily having to call it that. And so it's funny, all these synchronicities. I literally was just saying that to someone today. Objectivity is key. I learned through experience to discern the difference between personal and impersonal impressions. My indicator of an accurate intuition is a lack of emotion. For me, a clear impression has no emotional energy connected to it whatsoever. If I feel an emotional connection to an impression, then I consider that impression to be contaminated. The person you are reading, however, will often feel some emotional charge from the impression you receive. For me, impressions are neither auditory nor visual. Rather, they are like quick mental images that contain a very subtle electrical current. As I scan somebody's body, I focus on each energy center and wait for an image. After about 5 seconds, the imagery process starts and it continues to unfold until it stops on its own. The duration varies from person to person. Reading some people requires almost an hour, while others take less than 10 minutes. Every now and again, I encounter a person whom I cannot read or help. I can only speculate on why this is so. A few times I was left with the feeling that I had nothing. A few times I was left with the feeling that nothing I said would make any sense to them. And at other times I had the impression that the person was looking for only a very specific type of answer that I could not provide, such as why their marriage had failed. Also, I'm virtually useless to anyone if I am exhausted or if something intensely personal is on my mind. As you learn to read the human energy system, your first step is to study the principles underlying the practice, and the next is to gain some practical experience. This book provides you with the theoretical concepts and some pointers in exploring your own intuitive abilities. In developing your skill and trying it out on your own life, however, you must trust your gut responses, a fact I cannot emphasize enough. Yeah, I definitely I've seen and heard of a lot of different ways that you can be an intuitively guided person. Um, I don't know. Like all the clairs, the clairvoyant, clair this, I would say that, I've had a mix. Like at some point in this chapter, she was talking about your inner child or people's inner child. And she said something that I did, in fact, visualize my inner child. Like I don't know if anybody's ever seen Naruto, but when Sakura talks to herself, it's like a little mini her inside of her head. That's what it felt like, but it was painful, idea of detachment coming from abandonment. So that idea of being able to read something and also having that balance. That's why I think that this is also a book about developing those gifts, because sometimes you just see stuff, and you have to know, like she said with the guy that she was intuitively reading him, and she saw an image of him being shot in a firing squad through the heart. That didn't actually happen. His wife had cheated on him with several different men, so then you think about the symbolism of being, a bunch of men lining up and shooting you through the heart, and you think about being cheated on. You're like, oh, okay, I get that image. I get the imagery and can decipher it, instead of just going off the first thing and be like, I'm going to die. Somebody's about to shoot me. I think that's very important, to develop these gifts. And I was talking to somebody else about going in and out of developing these gifts, and it's natural. But like she said, the idea that you have to be spiritual or meditate, it can literally be through whatever puts you in your highest vibration, that can put you in these states of higher consciousness. And the next chapter is how your biology becomes your biography. Positive and negative experiences that we hold in our body that create the way that we perceive life, enter our own personal hell or heaven, and also how it changes our DNA and can create, real life health problems and diseases. That guy, he had a chest pain, and through that, they were able to see, oh, okay, this firing squad, okay, you've been cheated on, and found a way to relate the pain of avoiding talking to his wife about her infidelity had caused the physical aching, like in this world, in this time, even though we are spirits or whatever the case may be, in this time, whatever he was feeling emotionally created a health problem for him. And if we notice a lot of a lot of our elders that are always sick, they're always people you can't change their mind. You can't talk to them. You can't get them to open up. You know what I mean? And then they pass down these health issues. And we seem to sometimes have the same problems and live the same life as these elders. And I think that, like I said, related to the post-traumatic slave syndrome and just everything else, it's funny how it all relates, and it's just incredibly overwhelming. How do you process all that? How do you know how do you live through that? And the first thing that came to mind just now is one day at a time. One day at a time. Okay. So now we're getting into the first principle. Trying to decide how far in I want to go. God damn, I might not go all this way in. Yeah, we might have to do a part 2 of chapter 1. Okay. The first principle: biography becomes biology. According to energy medicine, we are all living history books. Our bodies contain our histories, every chapter, line, and verse of every event and relationship in our lives. As our lives unfold, our biological health becomes a living, breathing, biographical statement that conveys our strengths, weaknesses, hopes, and fears. Every thought you have had, I'm going to have to restart this. Every thought you have had traveled through your biological system and activated a psychological, sociological response. Some thoughts are like depth charges, causing a reaction throughout the body. A fear, for instance, activates every system of your body. Your stomach tightens, your heart rate increases, and you may break into a sweat. A loving thought can relax your entire body. Some thoughts are more subtle, and still others are unconscious. Many are meaningless and pass through the body like wind through a screen, requiring no conscious attention, and their influence upon our health is minimal. Yet each conscious thought, and many unconscious ones, do generate a psychological or sociological, response. All our thoughts, regardless of their content, first enter our systems as energy. Those that carry emotional, mental, psychological, or spiritual energy produce biological responses that are then stored into our cellular memory. In this way, our biographies are woven into our biological systems, gradually, slowly, every day. The story of a young patient of Norm's is a good example of how this process works. Norm called me for a phone consultation on this patient, a dentist who was not feeling well in general and was becoming increasingly exhausted. He had an acute pain around the right side of his abdomen, and he was also seriously depressed. Increasing and continual exhaustion that takes the edge off mental and emotional clarity is an energy symptom that indicates something is wrong in the body. Most people do not consider it as a symptom because it is not actually painful. But when exhaustion continues, even when the person is getting more sleep, the body is trying to communicate that the person is energetically ill, energetically tired. Responding to this message at the energy stage can often prevent the development of an illness. Depression is another symptom that all is not well. Within the clinical world, depression is generally considered an emotional and mental disorder, but prolonged depression often precedes the development of a physical illness. In energy terms, depression literally is a release of energy, or life force, if you will, without consciousness. If energy is like money, depression is like opening your wallet and announcing, "I don't care who takes my money or how it's spent." Prolonged depression inevitably creates chronic exhaustion. If you don't care who spends your money or how much, inevitably you end up broke. Just so, without energy, you cannot support your health. Damn, one more time. In energy terms, depression literally is a release of energy or life force, if you will, without consciousness. If energy is like money, depression is like opening your wallet and announcing, "I don't care who takes my money or how it is spent." Prolonged depression inevitably creates chronic exhaustion. If you don't care who spends your money or how much, inevitably you end up broke. Just so, without energy, you cannot support your health. That to me kind of registers as a unintentional releasing of energy. So just like being impeccable with your words, I saw it as being intentional with your words and your energy and your thoughts, right? And in depression, when I'm feeling depressed, I am not being intentional with my thoughts or my words or and if I am, it's not towards a positive sense. You know what I mean? So in that way, at that point, I'm creating a different reality. I am creating a personal hell. I am creating biological responses to the biography of whatever I'm going through or have gone through at the time. So in that way, it's becoming my perception and it's becoming my physical being. All these thought process and structures, I'm becoming the physical embodiment of it, which is interesting. Like you are what you eat. You definitely are who you say you are. Your life is the way you say it is. You know, you're capable of the things you say you're capable of. And by being in this depressive state, it is definitely being unintentional with energy, you know, because a lot of the times in the depressive state, I tell myself, I'll feel better when I do this. I'll feel better when I do this. But in the true essence, okay, so yeah, my internet's being funny. I'm just gonna have to clip these together somehow. But as Norm examined his dentist patient, he had the feeling that the man was developing an illness. Because of the man's abdominal pain, Norm ran tests for pancreatic cancer, but they came back negative. So he called me for a consultation. As is our habit, he gave me only the patient's name and age and said nothing about the pain or his own suspicions. In my evaluation, I saw that the right side of this patient's body around the pancreas was generating toxic energy. I told Norm that this man was burdened by the enormous feeling of responsibility and that it had become a constant source of anguish for him. He felt intensely that he was unable to live as he wanted to, and he dwelled on this feeling almost to the exclusion of any other emotion. Obviously, we all have negative emotions, but not all negativity produces a serious physical illness. To create disease, negativity has to become the dominant emotion, as it did with this young dentist. That's terrible. Um, to to be that attuned to where you can know somebody's just name and age and read them. Um, Amazing. I really hope to, be that one day. Be that in tune, be that um, enlightened. But it's very sad that, to hear that negative emotion had become his dominant emotion, not his only emotion, the one you feel consistently. And it's sad because it's like I understand him. I think that the last 2 years have been very trying for me, and I stayed like even with depression and anxiety, stay at like a 70-30 and have been slipping closer to a 50-50, and that energetically is it's so difficult. It is so difficult, having those moments where I'm 60-40, but the 60 is the negativity. It is incredibly draining. I can't move. I can't, there's a lot of things I feel like I can't do, So to have that be a consistent dominant emotion, definitely feeling like it's the inspiration to not let it get there, and knowing that you have the power to, you know. After I'd shared this evaluation with Norm, I told him that the patient had pancreatic cancer. Norm admitted that he had already suspected that disease, but the test had come back all clear. He said goodbye and returned to his patient. He recommended to the dentist that he evaluate how well his life's work was serving him. More than likely, Norm said, he would have to make some changes to get what he wanted. The patient admitted that he wanted to leave dentistry, but he felt he couldn't go into something else because of the impact his decision would have on his dependents. Norm didn't tell him that he had had the energy frequency of pancreatic cancer, but he talked with him about his career frustrations and tried to help him shift his negative attitude. Unfortunately, the man was unable to act on Norm's advice. He defined responsibility as an obligation to care for others to the exclusion of himself, and he was unable to reconceptualize a life that included self-care and self-fulfillment as well. 2 weeks later, this young man's primary physician repeated the test for pancreatic cancer. This time, they proved positive. The man was operated on immediately, but he died within 4 months of his surgery. R.I.P. This young dentist. It's sad. And I don't want to keep prefacing, but she gets into this later in the book uh, about how, our tribe, our first chakra, our tribe is an amazing and a big part of our upbringing, but how sometimes those systems and the weight of having to be loyal to that tribe at all times, even if it goes against yourself, you know, um, it's a lot of times detrimental. And like I said, a lot of this stuff clicks with me because I often find myself in a position where it is 10 times easier to care for others and actually make it a responsibility to care for others rather than caring for myself. Um, very unfortunate, but the benefit of it is knowing that there is I think I am starting to get to the point where I do believe in multiple lives and like reincarnation and stuff. So I feel like he's still out here and he gets another go at it. That is the case, but it's also just a testament to the fact that there's something you can do. And these books, these different the access that we have to different things can keep us from going to those places. I definitely know I'm trying not to go to those places. I'm loving the idea and the process of creating my own personal heaven. And I'll just approach it like that. I hope everybody does. Back into it. It sometimes takes a concerted effort to shift your mind to allow yourself to heal. While the dentist could not accept that his professional sadness and feeling of entrapment were changing his body chemistry and health, it was easier for others to recognize these patterns in him. Accepting the idea that every part of your life, from your physical history to your relationships to your attitude, opinion, and the belief you carry inside yourself, affects your biological makeup is only part of the healing process, however. You also have to get that acceptance to move from the mental level into the physical level, into your body, to feel the truth viscerally and cellularly and believe it wholly. It is very easy to learn something new and apply that knowledge only casually. The idea that biography becomes biology implies that we participate to some degree in the creation of illness. But, and this is a critical point, we must not abuse this truth by blaming ourselves or any patients for becoming ill. People rarely choose consciously to create illness. Rather, illnesses develop as a consequence of behavioral patterns and attitudes that we do not realize are biologically toxic until they have already become so. Only when illness forces us to review our attitudes do we become close to comprehending that our day-to-day fearful or bitter attitudes are, in fact, biologically negative substances. Again, we all have negative feelings, but not all negativity produces disease. To create disease, negative emotions have to be dominant. And what accelerates the process is knowing the negative thought to be toxic. To create disease, negative emotions have to be dominant. And what accelerates the process is knowing the negative thought to be toxic, but giving it permission to thrive in your consciousness anyway. For instance, you may know you need to forgive someone, yet you decide that remaining angry gives you more power. Remaining obsessively angry makes you more likely to develop a disease, because the energy conscience of the negative obsession is powerlessness. Energy is power. And transmitting energy into the past by dwelling on painful events drains power from your present day body and can lead to illness. Oh, amazing. For instance, you may know you need to forgive someone, yet you decide that remaining angry gives you more power. Remaining obsessively angry makes you more likely to develop a disease because the energy consequence of a negative obsession is powerlessness. Energy is power. And transmitting energy into the past by dwelling on painful events drains power from your present day body and can lead to illness. Power is essential for healing and for maintaining health. Attitudes that generate a feeling of powerlessness not only lead to low self-esteem, but also deplete the physical body of energy and weaken overall health. Thus, the next principle to explore is the primary significance of power for health. Oh, that is amazing. That is another thing for, like, when I was talking about depression, when she was saying that depression is basically not being intentional with your energy and giving it away, just opening your wallet, being like, anybody could rob me, I don't care, you can spend the money, and opening yourself to things and activities and thoughts that will drain your energy. So just like when she said, energy is power, and transmitting energy into the past by dwelling on painful events drains power from your present day body. Because I heard that anxiety is worrying about the future, depression is focusing on the past, and peace is the present. And there can be different things inside of that, right? But it feels like it's speaking perfectly to that, and even to the four agreements, like I said, being impeccable to your word, creating your own personal heaven, that is a part of that. Like she says, biography becomes your biology, and the negative and positive emotions that we hold on to dictate our physical health in the physical realm. You know, it's like I'm really in this time period of trying to, what's up, low? What's up, low? That time period of trying to take back power, and a lot of that is like this psychological mind game of, like she said, not blaming yourself and being like, I'm a, whatever the case, I'm a shitty person. It's having the balance of taking responsibility, taking accountability, taking back your power in your life, while not using negative words and energy in order to do that. Like, I have to grind because I'm a bum ass bitch. Like, that is definitely counterproductive. And I find that, in my depressive states or in my moments where I'm negative, I'm thinking like that, you know? I am still wrapping the positive thought around some kind of negativity. And she's definitely speaking about forgiveness. And I've heard that so many times, and it's still a concept that you have to work on, because when somebody hurts you, you take that personally. And that's another four agreement that I'll get into. We're doing like the first chapter on Sunday. So when that agreement comes up, but that is it's natural to take it personally and apply it to yourself and start letting it make up your biology. It's crazy. I'm really trying to apply that, because I definitely can be victim mode a lot of the time and feel powerless, and then tell myself that I am powerless. And so, it's this constant cycle of reinforcing the negative thought patterns that are going to end up holding me back in the future. And one thing that she keeps saying, that I keep wanting to reiterate to myself, is your biography becomes your biology. The positive and negative experiences that we hold on to, the agreements that we made as children, negative or positive, that becomes the way we perceive the world, and that becomes the way that we start living in it, from creating a personal heaven to living in a personal hell because your health is deteriorating. Okay, so back at it. Power is essential for healing and for maintaining health. Attitudes that generate a feeling of powerlessness not only lead to low self-esteem, but also deplete the physical body of energy and weaken overall health. Thus, the next principle to explore is the primary significance of power for health. The second principle, personal power is necessary for health. One day, Norm called me to do an evaluation of a woman who is suffering from depression and chronic pain in her neck and lower back. Norm asked me if I felt that she would benefit from various electromagnetic treatments. I said absolutely not. She hasn't enough power in her system to benefit from those devices. This was the first time I had ever commented on a person's power in relation to healing. Norm asked me to elaborate, and only then did I realize what I had just said. Suddenly, I had an entirely different sense of the human energy system as an expression of personal power. I explained to Norm that this woman's attitude had caused her to lose power in her life. She felt inadequate, I said, was always looking for approval, and had a tremendous fear of being alone. Her self-esteem was based only on her ability to control others, primarily her children. Her fears and inadequacies were like a black hole, magnetically drawing everyone, particularly her children, toward it, only to crush them eventually. She continuously criticized her children in an attempt to keep them dependent upon her, since weak children find it difficult to leave the nest. She found flaws in their every accomplishment, whether scholastic or sports related, because she could not risk empowering them without emotional support or with emotional support. Because controlling others requires a tremendous investment of energy, and because she never actually felt in control, she was continuously exhausted. Her chronic pain was also the result of her inability to control others. By the time she arrived in Norm's office, she looked defeated. Searching for or saying, I'm going to do this thing because it gives me control. The feeling that you're holding on to or empowering is the feeling of being out of control. Just like she said, I'm going to not forgive this person because it gives me power. And the feeling that you're feeding is powerlessness. This woman could not cope with the inevitability of her children leaving home, yet she denied that she acted in anything but her children's best interest. In her own view, she was a supportive mother because she provided her children with a clean home, healthy food, and decent clothing. Oh my God, every black household knows this. Just because I'm dressed, Trisha Ann, doesn't mean I'm happy. Yet she systematically strove to undermine their emotional development, a fact that she could not admit. Since conventional medical treatments had not helped her, Norm was considering an alternative approach that included psychotherapy, cranial stimulation through an electrical device, and color and light therapy. If she had used these techniques, I realized she might have benefited for a week, maybe a month, but she would not heal completely until she gave up her pathological struggle for control. That afternoon, I saw that for an alternative therapy to succeed, the patient must have an internal concept of power, an ability to generate internal energy, and emotional resources such as a belief in his or hers self sufficiency. This woman had only an external concept of power, which she drew from an external source, her children. This patient could certainly go to a psychotherapy session, but unless she confronted the truth about herself, she would only be chronic. What? She would only be chronicling her complaints for an hour each week. No actual healing would take place. As M. Scott Peck had pointed out in People of the Lie and the Road Less Traveled, seeing and admitting the truth in ourselves about our role in creating our own problems and about how we relate to others is vital for healing. So just like she said, taking responsibility in a positive manner that is not going to be, okay, well, if it's all my fault, then fuck it then, like not doing any of that shit, which I definitely do and have done. Um, I also relate completely to having uh, an external concept of power, because I think that I was just thinking about this today. I think that a lot of the time too, when you're in a household where there's trauma, right? And my attachment style would be anxious, right? Because I always had to prove myself. People look at my grades from school now and they're like, "Wow, you were smart," and I'm like, "Yeah, but let a bitch get a B plus, it was an issue. Like it was a serious. Well, what is this about? It was never a good job for this. It was always that's what you're supposed to do. I don't think any child's supposed to get all A's, but you can, it was just always like this feeling of trying to please others. And I think even to this day, I have some sense of power in needing validation from not necessarily random people or friends, but especially in my relationships, where the idea of the only place you can get unconditional love is from somebody else, right? Which is such a weird concept because it's like, why can't I just give it to myself? But that is a structure, or that is something that is a biography that was made by my in a micro scale, my personal family, and in a macro scale, the country and the world that I live in, and having certain groups of people feel like they should be more dependent on other certain groups of people. So I definitely relate to that, and realize that there's so much unpredictability in that, because you don't know what people are going through, you don't know what their journey is, you don't know if they want to be one of these people that tries to change or not, or whatever the case may be. So having to rely your whole sense of power, sense of self, sense of worth on the what is it, unpredictableness of somebody else is what causes that anxiousness. Like I was watching somebody talk about what kind of parents kind of create the anxious person, the anxious personality type. And one of that is unpredictable. So the same thing that I'm running from, I'm creating, and it becomes this cycle. So I definitely relate to that. And I notice a lot of parents and a lot of mothers. I think a lot of the mothers that put a lot of their lives into their children probably started out, how I was, where it's like you put a lot of the only way you can get unconditional love is through a partner. But then that's unpredictable. So then you're like, okay, well, the only way I can get unconditional love is now through the kids that I had with that partner that left. And that's only unpredictable because, yeah, they have to live their own lives. That's like a section of your lives. Like some people make mom their entire identity, but it's like that is your main responsibility only for like 18 years. You know what I mean? So when that 18 years is up, kind of how she's talking, there is no sense of self. It's who am I without my kids? Who am I without this man? Who am I without my looks? Who am I without whatever uh, earthly force that you put on yourself and you put value on? So we're gonna go back into it. We're gonna go back into it. Just to reiterate, only when illness forces us to review our attitudes do we. Did I do this? What did I read? Hold on. First time I had. Oh yeah, it changed pages. Okay. Just to reiterate, no actual healing would take place if she just did the sociological or psychotherapy and not had a personal sense of power, right? As M. Scott Peck has pointed out in People of the Lie and the Road Less Traveled, seeing and admitting the truth in ourselves about our role in creating our own problems and about how we relate to others is vital for healing. Which, other to that point, it's probably because I did have an opportunity to be a mom and it just kind of didn't work out, like, with my body and stuff like that. But it's like I said, it's almost like sometimes you have to, not saying that's a blessing, but to know that I would have been more dependent on my child because the dude that I was pregnant by at the time was not, he was unpredictable. Let's put it like that, right? So it just would have created another cycle of chaos. Evaluating this woman gave me insight into the role of power in our lives and our energy systems. Power is at the root of the human experience. Our attitudes and our belief patterns, whether positive or negative, are all extensions of how we define, use, or do not use power. Not one of us is free from power issues. We may be trying to cope with feelings of inadequacy or powerlessness, or we may be trying to maintain control over people or situations that we believe empower us, or we may be trying to maintain a sense of security, a synonym for power. In personal relationships, many people who lose something that represents power to them, money or a job or a game, or who lose someone in whom their sense of self or power is invested, a spouse or a lover, a parent or a child, these people usually develop a disease. Our relationship to power is at the core of our health. Consider the first principle, that biography becomes biology. Together with this second principle, that personal power is necessary for health, power mediates between our internal and external worlds, and as it does so, it communicates in a language of myth and symbol. Consider, for example, the most common symbol of power, money. When a person internalizes money as a symbol of power, its acquisition and control becomes symbolic of that person's health. When she acquires money, her biological system receives the signals that power is coming into her body. Her mind transmits the unconscious message, I have money, therefore I'm safe, I'm secure, I have power, and all is well. This positive message transmitted in the biological system generates health. Of course, making lots of money doesn't guarantee health, but poverty, powerlessness, and illness are undeniably linked. When you have trouble making money or you suddenly lose money, your biological system may weaken. I recall one man who during the mid-1980s seemed to have the Midas touch. His company was increasingly successful and he had the energy of 10 people. He worked late hours, socialized in the early morning, and then showed up for work before everyone else, always alert, cheerful, and on top of things. Then in October 1987, the stock market crashed and his company collapsed along with it. Within months, his health deteriorated. He developed migraines, then lower back pain, and finally a fairly serious bowel disorder. He could no longer tolerate his late hours or his social schedule, and he withdrew from all activities besides maneuvering the survival of his financial empire. Before I go on, guilty, because I would say relationships and money. Because growing up feeling like we didn't have a lot of money, I made my whole thing like, okay, when I have money, I'm good. And so now I'm in a situation where I'm low on money. I'm feeling like uh, emotionally drained. And I had to say to myself today, like, why do I need money to be happy? Like right now, I'm just outside sitting at the park. I'm got my feet in the grass, which is like scary because I'm scared of all bugs, but like I'm risking it. I'm taking risks today. So I'm like, okay, it's terrible, but it's like, I got like, I'm having a good day. I did a talk. I'm reading, which is not something I actually or actively make an effort to do on a consistent basis ever. you know, and the only thing is missing is I guess perceived money. But when I go home, I have food, I have water, you know. But I started my day a little bit or a lot of bit like, you know, and you hold on to that. You take it, you hold on to it, and you're just like, well, when this comes back, which was this other book, which is kind of similar to this book, but it's actually rooted in Christianity. It's called The Law of Happiness, and it was talking about a guy that kept saying, "I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when," and they were just talking about having a present day sense of happiness because that guy was, oh, I'll go on this trip when I make CEO, and then he made CEO. Oh, I'll do it when I make partner, and then he made partner, and he worked all the time, and it's just about being happy in the moment, creating that sense of just being able to exist within yourself and that being enough for you. Still working on that. Still working on that. Okay. He could no longer tolerate his late hours or his social schedule, and he withdrew from all activities besides maneuvering the survival of his financial empire. This man was unaware that he had calibrated his health to making money, but when he became ill, he saw the connection immediately. He realized that for him, money represented freedom and the ability to lead a lifestyle that he had always dreamed about. When he lost his fortune, he lost his power, and in only a matter of weeks, his biology crashed too. Certainly, the stress of recovering a business would weaken anyone. But this man had undergone just as much stress when it comes to his company and the type of. Sorry, let me go back. Certainly, the stress of recovering a business would weaken anyone, but this man had undergone just as much stress when his company was on the rise, and that type of stress had empowered him. Each of us has numerous power symbols, and each such symbol has a biological counterpart. The dentist with pancreatic cancer had a symbol of power, his job. But since he had grown to despise his job, he was losing power every day. The power drain created a biological response that continued until it had created a terminal disease. Just to go back on that story that she kind of touches on, there was a dentist that this lady's amazing. So she's a medical doctor that then went into intuitive healing and combined her practices and is showing you how they relate, right? So there's a doctor that calls her. She's in a now she's just more on the intuitive side. There's a doctor that will call her. He'll tell her the name and age of the dude, right? She was like, this guy is holding on to weight, feeling like he's got to do something, and it's basically it's creating toxic energy from his pancreas. The guy basically tried to talk to him. He was a dentist, and he was like, yeah, I hate my job basically, but there are people depending on me, so I just have to do stuff I hate, you know. And basically 2 weeks later, then he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and they gave him surgery. 4 months after that, he died. So she's just referring to, you know, the fact that there was another dude that she talked about him having chest pain and his heart was broken because his wife had, you know, cheated on him. So basically talking about how our biography becomes our biology, the things that we hold on to positively and negatively affect our physical health. So just to put in reference of that, he loved his job. At some point he started hating it, but he would not give himself permission to do something he loved or do something for himself. He was so used to doing something for everybody else that living a life that included his happiness just didn't seem plausible, and he passed away not too long after that.
Yeah, it's definitely an echo in the universe, because I just had a friend last night tell me to wake up and name 3 things I was grateful for, and then like before I go to sleep, name 3 things I'm grateful for. Then if anything went wrong, like try to make a positive spin on it. So I know like there's this like idea of being like toxically positive, but also just like it helps with what you're talking about too. So it's not easy. I think this is day 2 for me, maybe day 1, I don't know. But I like it. It's a new perspective. I'm enjoying it so far.
I honestly think that I'm going to start doing that too. That sounds amazing. And I heard that at a concept. It was at a job that I hated. It was just like every time you start thinking about how much you hate something, or you know, how you dislike something or whatever the case may be, to try to just think of things that you're grateful for to raise your vibration. So I definitely might try that. I don't know if you can be toxically positive. I think you can be naive, right? Or, you know, but I don't think you can be toxically positive. I think that's why it's the importance of having the balance of everything, right? But yeah, good to see you, Lo, and I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm gonna start doing that. Thank you for bringing that to me. Let's see, where is that at? Okay, so each of us has numerous power symbols, and each such symbol has a biological counterpart. The dentist with pancreatic cancer had a symbol of power, his job, but since he had grown to despise his job, he was losing power every day. The power drain created a biological response that continued until it had created a terminal disease. Our lives are structured. Oh, my back. Our lives are structured around power symbols: money, authority, title, beauty, security. The people who fill our lives and the choices we make each moment are expressions and symbols of our personal power. We often hesitate to challenge a person who we believe holds more power than we do, and we frequently agree to things because we believe we haven't the power to refuse. In countless situations and relationships, the underlying dynamic at work is the negotiation of power. Who has it, and how can we maintain our share of it? Learning the symbolic language of energy means learning to evaluate the dynamics of power in yourself and others. Energy information is always truthful. Although a person may verbally agree to something in public, his energy will state how he really feels. And his real feelings will find their way into some symbolic statement. Our biological and spiritual systems always seek to express truth, and they always find a way to do so. You need to become conscious of what gives you power. Healing from any illness is facilitated by identifying your power symbols and your symbolic and physical relationship to those symbols, and heeding any messages your body and intuitions are sending you about them. Uh, Amazing. This is before we go into the third principle. And I think that that's great because I feel like every time I'm having an energy exchange with somebody, it's obviously feeling like a power struggle, you know? So to then create, or to then, put it around the idea that energy is power, and anytime you're in any situation where it feels like it's unnecessarily draining of energy, that is that power dynamic. So it's amazing that, like I said, they're just truths that we know, and truths that we hold on to in our body, in our inner being. Like one thing that she said is like an example is if somebody lies to you, um, they might say something different, but you can tell that they're lying, right? There will be stuff that happens. Um, there'll be stuff that they do, stuff that they say, stuff that doesn't match up, that shows that that's not energetically the truth, right? And so one thing that she says, energy never lies. Energy never lies. So that's the importance of it, the power of it. The next point is the third principle: you alone can help yourself heal, which is amazing. That this one is a little bit longer, so I don't want to have to stop in the middle of anything. Let me see. Yeah, I might do a part 2 of this chapter, and then we'll be at chapter 2. But this book is just amazing. Um, this is probably like my third time reading it, and every time I feel like I needed it, needed to relearn it, needed to process it, hear it, whatever the case may be. Um, yeah, it's, I don't know. What are my ending thoughts? And I'll go ahead and I'll wait a little bit, Lo, if you want to send a message. Tell me what you thought about it. The book is called The Anatomy of the Spirit by Caroline Myss Ph.D. The link above is her kind of going into depth of it. The idea is combining medical healing and intuitive healing, and, you know, an active and/or passive way to heal. So I would just say, What is the main thing I want to take from this is intention. I would say that in struggling with depression at times and having moments where that comes up, there are a lot of moments where I'm very unintentional with my word, not impeccable with it, just like the four agreements. There are a lot of moments where I'm not intentional with my energy, not intentional with my positive energy, and not doing what I know is the right thing to do with the negative energy. You know, transmuting it into positive energy and or releasing it instead. There are a lot of moments where I add fuel to that personal fire. So I think that I don't know, there's so many great things to take from it. And I think that one of the questions she asked, let me make sure I get it right. Okay, you need to become conscious of what gives you power. So let's see. There are a couple things. What gives you power, Lo? And one more. What gives you power, Lo? I want to see if you heard that, but she says you need to be conscious of the things that give you power. So,
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's pretty dope because like I've been discussing this idea with people a lot lately where like stress, I think depression, anxiety, just wear down on your gray matter in your brain. I'm like, yo, as a scientist, I need all the gray matter I can keep, but it also wears you out in other ways. And then like biochemically, the hormones that are produced when you're under stress that create other like reactions in your body. I feel like all of this is very valuable, like information, priceless information. I is this like the book is called The Anatomy of the Spirit? I'm definitely gonna watch this video, and probably get the book too. Shoot, I like to read. I like to learn.
yeah, it's very cheap on Amazon or wherever you get it. Just depends. Um, very cheap wherever you decide you want to get it. And I think they have the audio book also. Like just like with the four agreements, they have the audio book of it also on YouTube. So it's like I said, this is my third time, and I feel like it's exceptional advice. It's definitely worth reading as many times as you need to, and even after that, a couple more times. Shit.
The thing that gives me power is my music, my creativity, also my ability to learn, because I'm learning a lot more to get like more licenses under my belt, and the money from those licenses will go back into my creativity. So a nice little cycle right there. Also having control of my environment, so I'm working on that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like one of the things that gives me power is obviously this music and expressing myself, and I would say expressing myself, being able to do that um, in a way that I feel like I can get my point across, and actually trying to utilize that to be more intentional with my energy. Um, I think being outside gives me a sense of power, just being one. And I think teaching. I think teaching gives me power, you know, being able to teach myself or learn, being a teacher and a student simultaneously. That is something I genuinely enjoy, like in moments like this, reading and learning. So I think in that, I'm definitely working on changing my perception. Because when you put it like that, if I had a choice to be healthy or not, I would rather be healthy. And if you put it like that, if I had a choice to, live in a personally created heaven or hell, it would definitely be heaven. So the two things that uh, I watched and learned today, I'm going to be impeccable with my word, you know, focus my words and energy, my thoughts on kindness and love towards myself and others, and to change my perception, and also focusing on my personal power. And just like I said with that guy, like, because I relate to the dentist, is being able to have that sense of power with just me, and finding more answers. Because honestly, when it's like, well, where do you get your personal power? It's like, oh, the first three answers are like from helping people. So I think that's something I definitely want to dive into. I'm gonna plan a part 2 to finish this chapter 1, and then I got to talk with you on Sunday. So more growth, more learning. Um, yeah, my service kept messing up, so I'm gonna have to like bit these together to put them on YouTube. But I appreciate Lo for being here. Appreciate you guys listening, and yeah, I want to reread this part before I go. Because I was like, damn. Yeah, here we go. It surrounds us and carries with us the emotional energy created by our internal and external experiences, both positive and negative. This emotional force influences the physical tissue within our bodies. In this way, your biography, that is, the experiences that make up your life, becomes your biology. It's very powerful. Right, so, have a good day out there, Lolo. Bye.